Hello and
Yes,
good evening. So, welcome to the very first session of 2021 by Kerala Microsoft Users Group. We have today our veteran KMAC member and volunteer and core council office bearer, Mr. Yanis Tyagi, with us, who is the CTO, Chief Technology Officer at Cognify Technologies Private Limited. Today, he will be giving a talk on the topic artificial intelligence in the real world. Feel free to make this an interactive session. So, either you may type your questions and suggestions in the chat window anytime, or feel free to unmute yourself and talk in mic as and when required without much disturbing the presenter. And try not to deviate from the topic also. Try to stick to the artificial intelligence and related areas only. And thank you, Yanish, for accepting our request for the session. And without further ado, over to you, Yanish.
sure. Thank you, Praveen, and welcome everybody. So it's good that it's our first session of 2021, and I'm really excited to meet all of you, have a discussion with you guys, and see where it goes. And so, what we are going to talk about here is basically the artificial intelligence, and everybody knows what is artificial intelligence. That is a general understanding. In fact, people who are not into the technology, they also know what is the artificial intelligence. So what we are going to talk here is something different, not just that AI can do this, AI can do that. Rather than that, we are going to talk, look at it from a different perspective. But before we delve into it, a little bit about me. So my name is Yanesh Tyagi, and I have almost more than 25 years of experience in the industry. So that includes a lot of things. I started as a programmer, and I started writing the code in something called DBase. Not sure whether some of you might not even have heard of it, and then slowly keep moving. So that's how it works. And I have worked on many domains during 25 years, mostly into manufacturing, retail, banking, fintech, and payments. And right now, what I do is I help the business, because since I have worked for a long time in these domains, I understand the business problem these guys face. And I understand some of the problems are solvable, some of the problems are apparently not solvable. So, in fact, either IT guys or everybody believes that they cannot solve the problem. So I help these businesses to, figure out a solution, and I use the cutting edge technology to make them understand how the problem can be solved. So more of you can think of it as I identify the problem with the different domains and then provide a solution. As part of my regular job, we do develop our own artificial intelligence, and especially into the computer vision products. And we have our own technology platform. So that is what we do. But I will keep it based on my experience, rather than talking about my organization or my company and what our products are, because I don't want to make it advertising session. But rather than that, what I learned when I deal with the people, when I deal with the customers, and how do we overcome the challenges and all, that is what we'll talk. So you can connect to me on the LinkedIn, and you can connect to me on the Twitter. If you want to know further about me, you can just go to the Google and search Yanesh Tyagi, and I hope the first two pages will be relevant, and you will find what I have done. A lot of things I have failed in, a lot of things I have succeeded in some of them. So all that, my entire life is out there on the net, so you can figure that out. So what is the basis of this talk? What are we going to talk about, and what gives me a right to talk about AI and I do all these things? So let me just say what is giving me, what is the experience that I'm going to talk about. So I have delivered 9 successful AI projects for Fortune 100 and Fortune 500 organizations across the globe. That involves companies from US, Europe, Australia, in fact, Malaysia, Singapore also. So that is one thing, and that was a large experience, and that the experience was entirely different than when we do the non AI or the traditional software development. The experience was entirely different. So I'm going to talk about that experience, what I learned, and when I applied the traditional way of project management, what I have learned in my last, let's say, around 21, 22 years. And when I applied that thing, how did I fail and how did I overcome those challenges and all those things? So I'm going to talk about that. Then there's another thing in the AI, and what we are saying is what is the overcome of the challenge from lab to floor transition. Now, in normal software development, you do not have that. You have the requirement and then you have the QA and the production. But in AI, we have something like lab to floor. So we have the lab, everything works in the lab, but the moment you go live, everything fails. And it happens most of the time. Usually they say like 99% of the AI projects fails in the real world scenario. And that was the motivation for me to, talk about it. And in fact, the name also, I kept it like this, AI in the real world. I didn't want it to tell that, okay, we can do this or we can do that in the AI, but rather than how do we do, what are the challenges we face. Then the next thing I'm going to talk about is to bridge the gap between research, engineering, and business. So AI is very much research oriented. Without research, it is almost impossible to do. So it's very much research oriented, but the only problem is the people who work on the research has a different lingo, different talk, and a different mindset. Engineering is what my understanding is. All of us are basically the software developers. We make the part of engineering. So whatever is the research that comes out, we make that research to work to make something happen, and then business, of course, to solve the business problem and to make the business understand. So that is what we are going to talk about here. Then we are going to talk about understanding and managing the outliers, and that is a very important concept in machine learning, in data science, and in AI, because outliers are something which I have seen practically almost everybody forget about it. They do not consider it, and at the last moment we say it is not working and the project fails. If you ask me why the AI project fails, I will say 60% or 70% of the time it is because of the two things. We fail to identify and manage the outliers, and I will go ahead and explain you what are the outliers basically. And the second is we fail to manage the customer's expectation. So, and that is another thing that I'm going to talk about. How do we manage the customer's expectation? And then we will normally talk about all the traditional project management stuff, delivery stuff, and all those things, which I guess most of you are well aware of it. In fact, we have some ninjas like Praveen Nair, who is a ninja in project management. So that is something like traditional. But what I'm going to talk about is how does the traditional thing we need to customize it for the AI project. And I appreciate you guys if you just jump in anytime and ask any question. I want it to be more of a Q&A session rather than a presentation. I don't have any further slide to present actually. If you see, I have all the placeholders, all the slides are empty because I really didn't want it to make it a on-demand video where I keep talking and everybody keep listening. If that was the motive, you can just go and watch any video on the YouTube. So let me talk about it, what we do. So when I say I have delivered 9 projects, I definitely cannot talk about the clients because of certain NDAs that we have signed and all those things. I'm not supposed to talk from my organization point of view, but I can say like I have worked with the clients, topmost client in the retail industry. And when I say the topmost, I'm talking about the world's topmost clients. So it should be easier for you to figure out. I just don't want to take the names here. So I have worked with the topmost client in a retail industry. I have worked with the top clients in manufacturing. I have worked with the banking domains also on the top clients. We have worked with the basically the train organizations like Indian Railways. So I have worked with other companies, other countries, railway organizations also, and so on. So what I learned from there, when we talk about all these things and when we work with these people, what I learned from there. One, these people do not know what AI can do. So, and I will keep giving you the examples for that. So for example, when I was working with one of the manufacturer, they have a problem, and the problem was that the machine, which is supposed to work 24/7, they were expecting to get a 24 hours output from the machine. And without having any downtime, they were getting only 20 hours of the outcome. 4 hours are just getting lost and they had no idea where it is going. Right? Even though they have put all the things, they have the industry 4, they were industry 4 compliant, so they put all the sensors and the machine is running. Their sensor data show that the machine is running 24/7, but they are not getting the productivity of 24 hours. That is where, so that was one of the challenges that was thrown to us. Now if you see, we met the customer, we understand the customer said that is my problem. The machine is not running 24 hours, where though we get the data that it is running 24 hours. There is no requirement given here. There is nothing. The customer's expectation is you make my machine run 24 hours. You see the irony here? We are the software people, we do not run the machines. Right? But then the customer says, my machine is running 24 hours, I'm not getting the productivity, you make my machine running 24 hours. So the first thing that we need to understand here was what exactly is the customer's problem. Any idea? Anybody want to pitch in and give some suggestion? What do you think was the customer's problem? Okay, I'm hearing no. All right. So what was happening is the utilization of the machine was not proper. And why the utilization of machine was not proper? If the machine was supposed to run 24/7 and the machine is off for 1 minute, and when I say off, it is not switched off electrically, but it's not being operated for 1 minute, we are losing the productivity of a minute. And whatever they were producing at that time, one piece produced 1 minute. So with one machine, the production was one piece per minute. So if one machine is not working for a minute, they lose one piece. If that happens 20 times a day, they are losing 20 pieces from one machine, and they are losing the 20-minute productivity. That was the issue. Now the problem is why the machine is not working for 1 minute. So we thought about that and we said, okay, we can use our vision platform, or I would say rather than our vision platform, we can use the vision technology and we can figure out what is happening. So we worked with their camera team and we hooked we get the feed from their camera, and we utilized some of the machine vision, computer vision, machine vision technologies to understand what is happening. Now, anybody has any understanding of the machine vision or how does the computer vision works, except that about the normal video, we see that it can detect there is a person in the frame or there is a car in the frame. Anybody has any other experience on that? And when I say experience, not doing it, but as part of understanding what it can do. Okay, so not sure whether people are a bit lazy to unmute themselves or they really don't have. So what can we do with the computer vision? We can you can find hundreds of the videos on the YouTube which says that you can actually determine what is the object. There is a dog over there, there is a car over there, there is a scooter over there, or there is a people. But none of these things are actually useful to solve the business problems. You can solve very trivial problem where you can say I can count how many people are there in an image, but beyond that you cannot do. So what is required to go on the floor. You understand what people are doing. What is the action of the people? So in this particular scenario, we wanted to know if there are people who are operating on that machine, why the machine is being stopped for 1 minute. So we start training our model, and now I'm just going by the assumption that everybody understands that AI works based on the training of the model. If that is not the case, just explain that in 1 minute. What does that mean? And it means in your traditional software development, you get the business rules from the BA or from the client or whatever, which we call the requirement. So they exactly tell you that if you have to write a function to sum the 2 digit, how do you do the sum? So they will tell, I will give the 2 digit like 2 and 3, and you have to put the mathematical sum and give me the result as 5. So all the rules and regulations is what you code in, you program, and that's what the most of the time you are just doing as part of your day job as a programmer. So this is the traditional way of doing it, where you have the input data, you have the rules which you have coded into your programs, and then you generate an output. That is what you do. But when it comes to the artificial intelligence, or when it comes to the machine learning, because machine learning is part of the artificial intelligence and that actually makes the basis, we do not define the rules. We do not tell the rules. We say, look what, this is the data and this is the result I want. You figure out what are the rules. To give you an example on that, how do you teach a little kid, maybe a 6 month or a 1 year old kid, that this is a glass, or this is a glass tumbler, or this is a teacup? How do you teach that? You don't tell that this is a cylindrical shape. You don't tell that there is a bottom and one side is open. You don't tell that there is a handle. You don't define all the definitions and all the rules like what you get in your requirement document. You don't. You just point the kid to a teacup and say, this is called teacup. Or in fact, you don't do that also. You call that as a teacup, and the kid picks up you saying it teacup. The kid also starts saying it teacup. And over the time, the kid gets see the different kind of the teacups and start understanding what is the difference between a teacup. Then suddenly the kid see a coffee mug. Then he will say, this is a teacup. You say, no, this is not a teacup, this is a coffee mug. Now, again, you don't explain the difference, because in fact, we also don't know. If you ask me to explain what is the difference between a teacup or a coffee mug, I don't know. For example, if I show you my coffee mug here, this is a coffee mug. Now, if somebody asks me, why can't it be a teacup? I don't know how to actually put the actual requirement for that. Maybe some experienced BA can do it, but I don't know. I just know looking at it that this is a coffee mug, right? So the same way, what we do, to our AI system, we gives the data and we gives the data and we tells it this is what it is with the examples. So we are giving the data and we are giving the examples, and the system automatically defines the rules which we never know. It will define the rules which are basically the mathematical relations, more or less the relations of the neurons in your mind, and gives us the output. Initially, the output may not be good. We keep training until we get the desired outcome, right? Any question on this? Okay. So in fact, if somebody has a question and you don't want to speak, you can put it in chat also. And maybe.
Hi, Yanesh. I have a question.
Yes, please, just Shekhar.
Yeah, so this is a manufacturing unit. Can you just give a little more hint on the problem?
Right. So this was a manufacturing.
I understand your NDA, but yeah, just more hint.
I can definitely give you the hint. This was a manufacturing unit, and inside the manufacturing unit, the machine that I am talking about was an assembly machine, right? It takes the different raw materials in, assemble them automatically together. In between there was a few manual operations where operator has to press a few buttons at different stages, and it gives me the final outcome. Right? I mean, I don't want, I can't take the name of the product actually.
No worries. Yeah, that's fine.
Right. But so what was happening is, once all the inputs are continuously being fed into the machine, so it was producing 1 unit per minute. And so they are expecting that if it is a 8 hour shift, so they were expecting 8 hours into 24, these many units, I think that comes around 440 or something, these many units was supposed to be produced, but they don't get that production. So what we did, so we started training our system on that. Our very first thing was to understand how does the machine work. So we took the data from two sources. One, we tapped in into their CCTV. They already had the CCTV installed in the shop floor. So we tapped in into their CCTV network, and we start getting the video feed from there. Then we tapped in into their sensor network, and we start getting the sensor data from there, so that we can correlate what is happening in around the machine, looking at the visual point of view, and what is the correlation with the data with that. So what we did, we tried, so we have the capability, in fact, our technology of computer vision that has the capability to understand or codify the people's action, what action a person is doing. So we understand when the people come around the machine or they work on the machine, what they are doing, whether they are operating the machine, or even if they're operating the machine, how they are operating, are they pushing the button in the right way or not, are they struggling with something, and then we correlate that data with the data coming from the machine sensors to figure out. Now, once we trained the system starts throwing us the anomalies. Now what we learned is that there was a button on the machine which in theory should take less than a second to press. But actually, when the person was working on that machine, the button was misaligned, and he has to press the button 4 or 5 times in a different way to make the button happen. I understand that thing was, nobody noticed it, and that thing was happening almost every minute, taking the lag. So the system identified that and said, this is not the action which was supposed to be done in this way. Why this button press action is being done in a repeated way? We took that and we discussed that with the management. We discussed that with their engineering team. The engineering team looked into that, and then they realized that the way the button has been put into the machine was not the most efficient way. So they had around 110 machines. Initially, on our recommendation, they changed the button on 2 machines. So their engineering team come up with some other solution how the button should be, and they changed the button. We saw the improvement. Then they changed the button on all 110 machines. This is just one example how AI in the real world helps. We are not putting any AI into the machine. We did not change anything that the existing process, nothing. We just identified why the efficiency of the machine is not coming, and we gave them the solution. Today, we trigger at least 40 to 50 anomalies of these kinds every day. And their engineering team's hands are full to sort this out and figure that out. In another case, we realized that they were supposed to put the raw material inside the machine. It is more like when you put a cartridge inside the printer, right? So you have a printer, and when you try to put the ink cartridge inside the printer, it is supposed to be a very smooth experience. You open it up, you take the cartridge out, put the new cartridge, fill it up. But for some machines, we realize that people are really struggling because there was a misalignment. And these people does not know, because the struggle is not a big struggle. If it is, let's say, if they are supposed to change the cartridge in 30 seconds, and if it is taking them 5 minutes, then they will definitely go and tell their supervisor that there is a problem over there. But if it is supposed to be done in 30 seconds and it is taking you 40 seconds, nobody will complain about it, because it is just a 10 second. They don't even realize that something wrong is going on. So nobody complains about it, right? But accumulative, that thing being accumulated over 110 machines and 24 hours a day, it was having a huge impact on the production. So ultimately, with all our these things put together, we were able to increase the production by 12%. So this is just one example. And if you see, there is no elegance over here. There is no front-end AI where we can say we are doing this, we are doing that. There are certain things working in the background, silently looking into that people are struggling, or certain components has been kept in the wrong way. And just whenever the system feels that there is something wrong, it throws out an anomaly to the respective supervisor or respective manager, and then they look and fix it. Any question on that?
So Yanesh, there could be a lot of false positive, right?
Yes, correct.
So how your system is it keep on improving, or how do you rerun the model every time, or continuously learning?
All right. So that's a very good question, Raj, that you asked. And it's not only the false positive, it's the false negatives also. So I'll take another example here when we talk about the false positive and false negative. For one of the retail customer, we solved their problem, which is called bottom of the basket. It's a well-known problem in the retail industry, where what happens when you go to a supermarket, you take a trolley and the large bags. Let's say you bought 10 kg rice or 10 kg wheat flour. You put that bag into the bottom of that trolley, right? Now, when you go to the checkout counter, knowingly or unknowingly, so I don't want to blame anybody, but knowingly or unknowingly, you forget to take that bag out for the billing, and it doesn't get scanned. And ultimately, they are having a billing loss. And since these are the grocery items, they don't have the RFIDs or anything, so you can easily walk out of the store. Sometimes it will happen that you reach to the parking area and then suddenly you came to know, I didn't get this bag scanned. Then people are just a little bit too lazy to go all the way back to get that scanned, right? So it looks like a very trivial thing, but it was, for them, it was basically a loss of 25 million per year, 25 million US dollar per year. That was the loss they had. And they had tried a lot of things. In fact, they have put a one person whose job was to look at the bottom of the trolley and see whether something is there or not. But again, the problem with these kind of the things is people get distracted all the time. You cannot continuously 24/7 keep monitoring something. People get distracted, and that makes the difference. So we started working on that solution, and to figure out whether something has been left in the trolley when you get the billing. So we started to figure out if something has been left in the trolley or not. And with that, we started to getting a lot of outliers. I'll give you some examples. One, people, little kids, right? They put the little kids in the trolley. So there is a place in the trolley where you can make the little kids sit over there. Now the kid is having a doll. right?
Yeah.
So you understand, in the trolley, I see from the camera point of view, I see two little kids. Actually, it is one kid and one doll. Now, either you are going to have the false positive, where you say that there is a kid, but you say no, this kid has not been scanned. So because you consider the kid as a toy or a doll,
Yeah.
right? Or you are going to have the other way around, where there is a doll and you are just thinking that this is a kid, and you are not just giving an alert on that something left in the basket, right?
Yeah.
So it's not only false positive, there is false negatives also. But what happens? This is where the continuous training comes in picture. Now you cannot all the time train the model. What is required here is a continuous feedback into the model. So what we did with them, we changed the basically we changed the cashier console, and we gave a button to the cashier where cashier will say yes or no. So we will tell the cashier that there is a toy or there is this object in the basket, and the cashier will just have to press a button saying yes or no. So this looks very small thing, but this is the feedback that we are getting into the system, and the system now knows if a system is recognized, giving him a false positive or a false negative, we are penalizing the system, and the system is doing the right thing. We are rewarding the system. Like, as you know, all machine learning algorithm works on the reward based, right? So
Yeah.
that is what the continuous. So we call it a feedback loop. So we are giving that feedback loop to continuously improve the system. And that tells me the other thing, last part of my thing, managing the customer expectation. When you go and start talking to the customer always thinks, all right, you put the system, you need what? You need data, right? You need 10 hours of the video or 100 hours of the video. Once you have got all those videos, customer expect 100% accuracy, because that is what they are used to. If they give me a requirement for the billing system, and I scan a barcode or I punch in a barcode, they expect the invoice to come or the bill to come correct. But then we need to tell customer why this is called learning. So why machine learning is part of the AI and why it is called learning. And I usually give them the example. You can have a doctor. You can have the best doctor of the world. He cannot give you 100% guarantee that he will make you 100% fit and healthy, or he will treat your ailment 100%. No doctor can give you that guarantee, even though the doctor is the best doctor of the world. Why? Because for them, every case is a new case. And that is the exact reason the doctor never say that they are experts. They always say, I practice medicine. It's a continuous practice for them. The same reason, take the lawyers. No lawyer can give you the guarantee that they will 100% win your case. You always find a best lawyer based on the aggregate that, okay, in last 5 years or in last 10 years, whether he has been 80% of the cases or 90% of the cases or 100% of the cases, but no lawyer will give you the upfront saying that, yes, I will 100% win the case. And then also they say, I am a practicing lawyer. They keep practicing throughout their life. Same way, we are also talking about learning. Artificial intelligence is all about learning. As we are not defining the rule, the system is learning, system is making the mistakes. We tell system, no, you have made the mistake, this is the right thing. System learns from that, and over the time, it improves the efficiency and accuracy. And that is very important to make the customers understand this difference. We have to make the customer understand that initial X weeks or X months, depending on the complexity of the project, you might get 50% accuracy. Over the time, in the next X weeks or next X month, you will get 60% or 70% accuracy, and it will keep increasing. And we have to tell the customer very clearly, you will never get 100%, even though personally, I have achieved 100%. In certain cases, I have achieved 100%, but I say to the customer, sorry, I will not say 100% because I do not know tomorrow any outlier may come and my system may not detect it properly. So I will not guarantee 100%. But again, that is where you have to set the expectation very clearly. So in between, we did not talk about the outliers, but we talked, I didn't use the word outlier. So when I was giving the example of doll, right? So, and kid. So the kid is an outlier to me because I have to teach my system that the little kid doesn't have to be detected as an object. But in the same way, we have like people carry their umbrellas, and most of the women, they carry their handbags. People carry their mobile phones, which they keep on the trolley. So all these are the outliers. So we need to sit with the customer. We need to understand what are the outliers, and we need to train system to recognize and consider and take into account these outliers and how to handle that. And that is where when I was saying like most of the system fails because of the two things only: the customer expectation and the outliers. So in one of the project, again in a pharmaceutical manufacturing industry, our sales team was basically the salespeople. They just went and made certain commitments. They did not set the expectation right. So the customer was like, all right, once we put your system, you will take maybe 3 to 4 months to train the things, and then we will start getting the things right. It was about the automated quality control, where so what they do in the pharma industry, if you see on your medicine, there is a concept of batch number. Every medicine you take, that is having a batch number. So when they do the production, let us say it is the eye drop. So when they do the production of that eye drop, they run the entire machinery, and it is in most of the cases, it is from raw material to the packaging, it is hands-free. Nobody touches it. It runs into something they call clean room, which is totally hygienic environment and antibacterial and all those hygienic practices that they take. Nobody touches it, and it runs for let us say 8 to 10 hours. Then they have to stop it. They have to clean and sanitize each and every part of that entire machine system. Each and every part, they have to take it out, they have to clean, they have to sanitize, and they have to put it back. Rashid, you are saying something?
Nothing like that, Yanesh.
Okay, thank you. So they have to do that, and then they have to start over it again, which is basically, then they put the next batch number, right? So one of the problem was when they clean these things, sometimes there is a small droplet of water that will remain in one of the part. The cleaning process is automated. It will get cleaned with a lot of solutions and all those things. Finally, it will go to the air dryer, and the part will get dried in the air. Ultimately, it will come and get fixed into the machine. And they don't want any droplet of water, but sometimes a small droplet of water may remain on the metal part. So they have that QA process over there. They have a person who keeps looking into all these things, and then that person will take that part out or stop it and correct it. Now, what happened here in this case is our sales guy went and talked, and the overall understanding of the customer was that once your system, you said the training has been completed, I do not need to put a person over there. It will become 100% manless. And we really had a very, very hard time to make the customer's expectation right, to make them understand, no, it will not work in this way. What we say to the customer is, we can give you the 100% guarantee that there is no water droplet. But sometimes we might say that there is a water droplet, whereas there may not be. So as Anurag, you said correctly, we cannot guarantee there will not be any false positive. But the job of your QA guy has reduced to 80%. He just have to look onto the pieces where we show the alert, not everything, which means the increase in the overall time. So the time, if you are taking 3 hours to do all this job, now you are only taking 20 minutes to do the job. But the important thing was to manage the customer's expectation over there, that we need to ensure that the customer understands there is a learning process, system will learn over the time, and it is not a replacement of the human being. It is there to help the human. It is not there to replace the human being. And that is another one of the misconception of the AI, where everybody was saying that when AI comes in picture, what the people will do. AI is not to replace the people. It will never replace the people. At least I don't see it coming up to the level where in the critical system it can replace the people in next 25 to 30 years. I don't see that. In fact, our driverless cars are also not successful as on today. I think we have only 10 minutes left, so I quickly want to touch base on bridging the gap between research, engineering, and business, and then I will see if somebody has any question. Right. So one of the important thing in the AI age, it is heavily research driven. When we started with all these open source framework like TensorFlow, PyTorch, MXNet, and all these. We started working with these open source things, and we thought like we can use already trained model, or we can train our model, and then we can start solving the business problem. That works perfectly fine in your lab condition, because you know exactly each and every outlier, you know the lighting conditions, you know the noise. Basically, I would say you know exactly what is the noise in the data, because you are the one who is creating the noise. Either you are simulating the noise or you are creating, so you know. But when it goes to the real condition, it fails over there. So it requires a lot of research. So we decided to discard all these open source technologies and building up our own platform. For that, we hired the people, and these people we hired are basically the PhD, and they are the research scholars, that the academics working in the universities, professors, and all that. Now the challenge that I faced it, they do not understand anything about the software development. They're very focused on their task. You just have to tell them only one task. If you give them 2 tasks, they don't know how to handle it. Give them one task, exactly tell them what is the output you want, and they will be focused, they will get it done. The moment you give them something else, or the moment you distract them from one task and ask them to do something else, they're totally lost. That's the way they work. And the lingo that they use, they do not use the same language that we use. They totally talk about in terms of their research, in terms of mathematics, in terms of formulas. They do not talk in terms of requirements, bugs. They do not talk in that terms. So that was a big thing for me to learn and to understand that how the two teams, the engineering team and the research team, talk to each other. I always need to get in there and mediate the two things. And then another difference was with the business team. The business team talks in the business lingo, and I said like there is not much job of the BA over here, because the customer does not give the requirement. Customer only tells you the problem. Unless you understand what technology can do, how can you make the technology do it, you cannot provide a solution. So your engineering team need to understand the business language also. That is a big gap. Today, in our traditional world, we bridge that gap with the help of the BA who understand the business language, who understand the customer language. They understand the database and tables. They understand the record and invoice and bills and bridge the gap together. But here, that cannot be done. As I give you the example of manufacturing or example of the bottom of the basket, there is nothing. There is nothing for a BA. The person is saying somebody just kept a rice bag at the basket bottom, and I just want to know that that person does not take it out. How do we ensure? We don't want to use the security to stop the person, because that is something that makes the customer feel very bad, even if they genuinely forgot it. But we just want to make sure that this mistake does not happen. Now, we need to figure out what can be done. There are a lot of variables over there. So you take this picture, you divide that into, from engineering point of view, it is something like, from AI, we will detect that there is something, then it has to do all the plumbing has to be done. It has to talk to the POS software. A notification has to be given to the cashier on the screen. Only when there is something, cashier doesn't want to be distracted all the time. If feedback has to be taken from the cashier, it has to be provided to the model. So all that plumbing and everything, which we have been doing for a long time, this is required there. But when it comes to the research, from the research point of view, the job given to my research guy was, first, identify that there is a basket. Then identify there is something inside the basket. Then identify that whatever is inside the basket is not an outlier. Now, when I say it, it looks very, very, very simple. But take example, you are putting your hand on the basket. Now, is it a toy that looks like the shape of a hand, or is it a body part? How do you know that? You have kept something in the basket. I gave the example of doll, right? Or there is a mobile phone in the basket. Now, is that mobile phone belong to the customer, or the mobile phone is something which the customer has bought it and has not been built it? So there are a lot of challenges, and each of these challenges has to be divided, put into a smaller problem, and given to the research people. So that is the gap that you need to bridge. So I think we talked about it. Now I'll open it to the questions. Please shoot your questions. Rajnish, you are trying to say something, but I can't hear you. Hello, is anybody saying anything? Anything wrong with my voice, my speaker?
No, Yanesh, you are clear actually. We are able to hear you.
Yeah, right. Okay, got it.
So Yanesh, Anis here.
Yes, Anish.
So quick thing. Actually, based on the talk which we had just now, you were saying like there is nowhere a chance that AI is going to replace humans, or it is not going to overpower us, right?
That is true.
But still, there is a high probability or a high chance, like a lot of people are going to lose their jobs. So ideally, that is also a kind of replacing humans, right?
Yes, but are they? My question is, are they going to lose their job? I still have to figure out where we are saying that we can 100% completely replace the human being. I do not know any AI system today that can claim that they can 100% replace the human being. So my point is, in order to make that technology perfect, it might take next 25 to 30 years. It's not happening now.
Yeah, but still it started reducing the manpower, right? If I'm not wrong, I'm not sure, but still,
No, that's what I'm saying. Not exactly. It has not started. See, whatever we are seeing in the blogs or in the YouTube videos or whatever the journalists are saying, they are saying based on the lab research. And that is what I was trying to explain, that there's a huge difference between the lab research and the real world success. Unless you achieve the real world success, You cannot replace the human being. And I don't see that the technology has reached up to the level that we can replace human being as on today. That is exactly because you cannot replace the human being until you come back and say, my technology will give you the 100% accurate outcome. It cannot.
Okay.
Even though it could be as small a thing as doing the OCR, where you are just taking a PDF file or an image and reading the numbers out of there. There also, if it is in the financial system, you cannot give the 100% guarantee of that all the numbers that I read will be 100% accurate. And I take the example of financial system because a missed number or a misrepresented number can have a huge implications in terms of your transaction. Or it could be something like Alexa, which is the most hyped thing. If anybody has ever tried to order something on Amazon using the Alexa, and if you order 20 items, you will understand that it will make the mistake. It is not 100%.
Okay.
So unless we reach 100%, we cannot replace human. Unless we reach up to the stage that we replace human, there is no risk to the job. That is one part of it. But to answer your question from another point of view, actually, human will not get replaced. They need to be reskilled. They need to work with the technology so that technology improves them. For example, when the calculator came, or when the mobile phone came, right? Or today we are having a meeting over the Zoom. Why are we having the meeting over the Zoom? Because we have the restrictions because of the pandemic. Correct? Tomorrow, when the pandemic is gone, we will definitely gather together somewhere and we'll have a meeting because the technology or the AI or whatever cannot take the personal touch out of it. It is not the same when we are talking to each other sitting in a room. It is not the same when we are having the biscuits and tea together. So that is another thing. So looking from the technology point of view and looking from the human behavior point of view, I do not think that it is possible to replace the human beings. And I have not seen yet anybody saying that I have lost my job due to AI. Maybe due to a little bit automation, but not definitely due to AI.
Yeah, Yanesh, I think this is exactly what happened in manufacturing. As you said, probably job loss to job shift. So today, if you look at the Tesla factory or you look at the iPhone assembly factory, the amount of workers and the productivity that you had 5 years back is not the same as the productivity. Today, Foxconn is able to assemble 3 to 4 times more iPhone with far lesser employees than what they had probably 5 or 6 years. Automation obviously has impact, but I would also be a little careful saying job loss, rather it is job shift. What is lost in one area is a gain in another area. But what happens is workforce cannot be trained very fast. Skilling is becoming a big problem because we are all leading to continuous learning process, because people who do not have that continuous learning process are actually are at the danger or mercy of the job shift,
Yes, Rajiv, you said it very right that one, it is a reskilling problem, but more importantly, what you said is that it happens because of the automation. Now, automation and AI, I see them as two different things. Automation is basically you put a today. Let's say you have a people who are taking the item from one place and putting it at the another place. Tomorrow, you put a robotic arm with certain sensors over there, and that robotic arm will definitely do the job much more efficiently and putting the piece from one place to another place. That is what we say automation or industry 4 stuff what we are talking about, right? But that is different than AI. So my point was like I was saying there might be an impact based on the automation that has happened earlier also. In fact, if we go back to the history when they had the steam engine, before that the manual labor used to do the job, that happened at that time also. but it is automation. It is not the AI.
Yeah, I don't know, Yanesh, I agree with you. I will give you an example. So if you look at the Foxconn plant by itself, so what is the AI component there? If you look at that, today the robotic arms exactly know what it is holding. So earlier days, if you know that it was never able to assemble a glass, your iPhone glass, it was never able to assemble because by the time the robotic arm holds that glass, the glass was getting crushed. With lot of training over longer period of time, it is exactly able to know what pressure should I apply on a material that I am assembling that allows me to assemble that without breaking that component, you know. And that is, if you see, a lot of robotic arms training is happening, and it is exactly able to detect the material and what pressure that you should apply on that material so that it does not fall off from your robotic arm. At the same time, it does not crush your material, you know.
Yes, that is true, Rajiv. So, but again, I agree with you. That is the first thing, I agree with you. So what we are talking about here is a combination between automation and the training and AI. So in that sense, you may be right.
Yeah, that is a classic example. Actually, there is a study on Foxconn. The amount of phones that they assemble today and the amount of employees that they were able to reduce 5 times productivity higher, but with 1/3 of the workforce that they had. That is because these robotic arms started becoming understanding the assembly process and the subtleness they have. So it involves both AI plus even in the automation, you know, the robotic arms are also changing because they are becoming more soft like human skin, you know. Some of the today's robotic arms have very close to human skin as opposed to a fixed robot which has a very fragile hand, you know. So I think that job shift and continuous learning, what I'm seeing is that a lot of people are going behind in that continuous learning, which is threatening their jobs itself, you know.
Yes and no, both. So I'll give you one example here. I was talking to one of the customer, and that's in India. So I was sitting in their plant, and I was talking to one of the customer. What they are saying is they had the automated warehouse where they have the automated conveyor system, and they put their produce unit onto the conveyor, and then they conveyor take it and put it at the right place. Now, in order to maintain, so that warehouse is basically where they have so many conveyors and so many up and down lifts and all. So what they were saying, like they were having thousands of the motors, industrial motors that run those conveyors. Today, they have a system where systematically the maintenance guys goes over there, look into the motor and do the preventive maintenance. They asked me if it is possible to use a drone to do that. Drone can go and drone can take the maybe they were talking about the heat sensor, and drone can take the heat and vibration and all. So they have all that thing, the data input. Drone can capture the data, and it can better tell if the motor needs a maintenance or not. So rather than one person going all the time over there and looking into the motor and see if it needs a maintenance or not, a drone can do the better job. So yes, but again, my point is, even if you do that, you still need somebody to maintain those motors. You still need somebody to maintain the drone itself, right? So
Absolutely.
it is more of a reskilling. It is more of a reskilling. So the technicians who were just doing the motor maintenance, now they need to reskill themselves to learn the drone maintenance also.
Absolutely. I also don't think replacing human is the question here. Basically, that's what the difference between a job loss and a job shift is. You know, in a job loss, you are losing a job, but in a job shift, you are now forced to do something else in addition to what you were doing. You know, so job shift is surely happening. There is no doubt about that. Because if you look at the Tesla factories and all, there are very few people on the pipeline. You know, there is a. This is not how 40 years or 50 years back we assembled cars. It is today the entire battery pack and all comes without any human in there. But what happens if the machine goes bad? Obviously, a human has to look into that, which happens probably once in 3 months or once in 4 months.
Correct.
No doubt about that.
In fact, this job shift is what you are saying is applicable to everybody. When you are saying, I was just thinking about myself. I started my programming in D-Base, then I moved to Fox Pro, then to Visual Basic. If I did not learn the new skill, I would have been totally out of job. Today, nobody will give me a job if I say I am a Visual Basic programmer or a Fox Pro programmer, right?
Absolutely.
So,
That is what is happening. If you look at some of the machine, like some of the mainframe programmers, that exactly happened to them, because they have been spending 20 years in mainframe, and mainframe jobs are coming down when they can't now move to another area because they lack, unless they reskill,
Right. So that is there. That is basically if you are getting outdated and you are not changing as per the changing environment in your industry. So you are always running the risk of being jobless. But apart from that, as you said, like rather than replacing the human, it is more about a problem of the reskilling.
Yes.
Right. Okay. Any other question?
Yeah, there is a lot to discuss. Probably, I don't know, because I am little technical in this aspect, because especially areas like, as you said, today, one of the biggest problem I see is problem solving skill, In AI, you need a very good problem solving skill with the understanding that, we are no more deterministic, we are rather stochastic in nature, because the concept of deterministic solving, given a same input and getting same output, no more works in AI type of field,
Very true.
and that is something which probably a lot of business people don't understand. Actually, this is something which I've mentioned a lot to people, because that understanding is not with the customers today, because they always look the outcome to be deterministic,
Very true, very true. That is the reason, in fact, I said that managing the customer's expectation is a very, very important thing. That alone can decide the success or failure of your project.
Absolutely.
Right. So, Anurag, I guess we are running out of the time, or we have time. I'm fine to accept questions are there.
Yeah, we are actually like completed 1 hour. If we have any questions, we can continue. Otherwise, we can probably you can shoot the questions in WhatsApp group or
Right.
tweet directly to Yanish.
Yeah, either you can tweet to me or you can put it on WhatsApp group. That will be much better, because at least everybody's visibility will be there. No? So
Yeah.
unless it is a very personal question, let everybody look into that and jump into the discussion, right?
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, right.
I think there is no questions. So, thank you, Yanish. Sorry.